Hey everyone. Tonight we're going to sip tea in a palace that was never supposed to host you. Dodge eye contact with armed guards who are maybe smiling or maybe not. And accidentally test the limits of Middle Eastern diplomacy, because someone, somewhere, sent the wrong invitation to the wrong country, and nobody figured it out until after the pistachios were served. You've just stepped off the plane in Tehran. It's a warm afternoon. The air smells like sun-baked concrete, rosewater, and diesel fumes. Your shoes crunch faintly on the tarmac. And behind you, somewhere in the diplomatic baggage, is a gift basket full of artisan olive oil and an Israeli flag lapel pin. Which, if anyone here realizes who you are, could go very, very badly, because you're not supposed to be here at all. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And if you're listening from somewhere unexpected, maybe your own midnight tarmac, let me know your location and local time in the comments. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get down to business tonight. Blank. Underscore, blank. You can feel it in the air the moment you arrive. Something isn't quite right. Your handlers look puzzled. The protocol officer who meets you at the terminal seems nervous. She gives you a welcome gift wrapped in gold paper but doesn't quite meet your eye. Then she rushes away, speaking very quickly in Farsi, her clipboard trembling slightly. You smooth your jacket. You've done this before. State visits. Awkward receptions. Even that time you had to smile politely while a head of state made a 10-minute toast about your mother's cooking. But Tehran? No. Israel hasn't had diplomatic relations with Iran since before most people had email. The two nations haven't exchanged anything except threats, sanctions, and encrypted insults since the 1979 revolution. And yet here you are, on a red carpet that feels just a little too short, being handed a bouquet of white carnations and a card that says, "Welcome. Esteemed Minister of Cultural Cooperation." You glance at your aide. He shrugs. He's been up all night trying to get the encrypted phone to connect. No luck. You both exchange the kind of look that says, "Okay, so we're in Iran. Let's not panic yet." Blank. Underscore, blank. The ride from the airport is smooth. Too smooth. A government car glides down the boulevard, passing vendors selling roasted corn, young boys kicking a soccer ball between two parked taxis, and banners of imams fluttering in the breeze. Tehran unfolds before you in all its contradictory splendor, gleaming glass towers next to crumbling brick archways, satellite dishes hidden behind flower pots, a Starbucks knockoff called Starbucks that definitely serves Turkish coffee. You take it all in with a strange calm. Maybe this isn't a mistake. Maybe it's a backchannel meeting. Maybe this is what détente looks like now. Covert invites disguised as clerical errors. Still, you check your phone every 3 minutes. No messages. Not even a meme from the defense minister, who usually texts you grumpy cats whenever something blows up in Syria. Blank. Underscore, blank. At the hotel, things get weirder. The room is palatial. Marble floors, silk drapes, fresh fruit laid out in a bowl carved from some kind of shimmering stone. There's a handwritten welcome note signed by someone called Deputy Minister of Shared Regional Understanding. A title so vague it might not even be real. The tea set is already waiting. It's silver, antique, probably worth more than your yearly budget for cultural exchange. You hesitate. This might be the only time in your life you drink mint tea while wondering if it counts as an act of war. Blank. Underscore, blank. Later, your interpreter appears. He's young, maybe 28, with large glasses and a nervous energy that makes the teacups rattle on the tray. "I think there is a small complication," he says. That's never a good sentence. He hands you a folder. Inside, the original invitation from an Omani intermediary requesting a non-public cultural dialogue on neutral territory. But there's a second note beneath it. This one printed on crisp Iranian government stationery. complete with official seal and signatures. And the name on it? Yours, with Israeli minister, clearly crossed out and replaced with UNESCO liaison. The air in the room suddenly feels thicker than the honey you're supposed to drizzle in your tea. Blank. Underscore, blank. You stare out the window. Down below, in the courtyard, a group of children chase a cat. A woman in a chador sits on a bench, feeding a toddler grapes. None of them know that upstairs, a potentially history-shaking diplomatic accident is brewing over a porcelain teapot. The aide returns with more bad news. They don't know, he whispers. Don't know what? You ask. He leans in. That you're you. Blank. Underscore, blank. You exhale slowly. This is going to be one of those days that ends up in either a memoir or a classified file. And this is where the history books might begin the chapter, if they ever find out. A simple clerical error, a misrouted diplomatic RSVP, one minister who checked the wrong box. And now, you, an official representative of a nation considered an existential enemy by the Islamic Republic of Iran, are currently sitting in a 5-star hotel in Tehran, sipping an accidental welcome drink and waiting for someone to realize they've invited the wrong guy to tea. And you haven't even touched the pistachios yet. You wake up still in Tehran, which is already strange. Usually, by now, there would be a flurry of diplomatic phone calls, a sharp knock on the hotel door, and a private jet fueled up on the tarmac. Instead, there's silence. Outside your window, the city hums softly, early morning honks, the clatter of shutters, someone yelling cheerful abuse in Farsi about traffic. Inside, it smells faintly of saffron and confusion. Your aide looks like he's aged 5 years overnight. They haven't cancelled anything, he says. You blink. They still think I'm the UNESCO guy? He nods. Or they're pretending to think you are. It's unclear. And that's the thing, isn't it? Unclear. Every step of this visit has been a masterclass in ambiguity. The invitation you received wasn't official. The Omani go-between, some minor princeling with a PhD in diplomatic studies and an addiction to crypto, apparently forwarded your RSVP to the wrong inbox. An Iranian undersecretary, eager to impress, filed it under cultural dialogue, safe for pictures. Nobody triple-checked the name. You were supposed to fly to Muscat. Instead, you're sipping strong tea in a city that bans your passport. And now, against all odds, the meeting's still on. Blank. Underscore, blank. Breakfast arrives in complete silence. Sliced cucumbers, warm flatbread, feta, and little dishes of dates arranged with geometric precision. You poke at the food like it's potentially rigged with symbolism. Which it might be. The dates, for instance, too many for one person. A message? Your aide chews nervously. I think this is the Omani strategy. He mumbles. Get both sides in the same room before either one can back out. The Persians love hospitality. Maybe they think once we're all drinking tea, nobody wants to start a nuclear incident. You raise an eyebrow. Has this ever worked? No, he says. But the Omani guy does have a podcast. Blank. Underscore, blank. Back in the early 2000s, when everyone thought diplomacy would just be email with flags, this kind of error would have been caught instantly. Now, with every State Department staffed by overworked interns and chatbots that must translate cordially invited as cordially incinerated, it's a wonder anything gets done at all. Somewhere, a language algorithm confused Israeli envoy to UNESCO with Israeli Minister of Culture. And now here you are, scheduled to attend a cultural exchange high tea with mid-level Iranian dignitaries who, as far as you can tell, haven't yet realized you're from the country they've officially referred to as the Zionist entity. You check your phone again. Still no texts from Tel Aviv. Either your signal's jammed, or Mossad is quietly watching to see what happens when a diplomatic bomb sits ticking in a marble hotel lobby. Blank. Underscore, blank. At 9 a.m. sharp. There's a knock. Not the knock. Not men with radios. Just a quiet, almost embarrassed tap. You open the door. Standing there is a middle-aged woman in a gray blazer, holding a folder and a plate of baklava. She bows slightly. I am Assistant Director Farzaneh. Welcome, sir. If you will follow me. You exchange a glance with your aide. He shrugs. You both follow. The elevator smells like rosewater. The music playing is oddly cheerful, somewhere between traditional string music and corporate hold music. You resist the urge to whistle along. Blank. Underscore, blank. The conference room is beautiful. And bizarre. Walls lined with calligraphy. A mural of ancient poets trading verses under a cypress tree. In the center, a table shaped like an infinity symbol, symbolic or just impractical? You can't tell. On the far side, 5 Iranian delegates smile politely. One of them, possibly an imam, possibly a bureaucrat, holds a notebook with a sticker that says Property of UNESCO Cultural Bureau. You sit. They nod. Tea is poured. The silence stretches like molasses. Blank. Underscore, blank. Then Farzaneh speaks. We are honored, she says, to have this opportunity for cultural understanding between our great civilizations. Your interpreter leans over. She thinks you're the UNESCO liaison from Paris. Should I correct her? You whisper. He looks horrified. God, no. Do you want to die before lunch? You smile warmly. I'm honored to be here. You say, choosing every syllable like it might set off a drone. The Imam-ish delegate nods solemnly. Culture, he says in English. Culture is bridge. You nod. Yes, a bridge. A very secure bridge. Blank. Underscore, blank. And so, somehow, the meeting begins. You talk about cultural diplomacy, about Persian poetry, about how Israeli and Iranian filmmakers sometimes screen at the same European festivals, though never at the same time. And never without security clearance. You mention a museum exhibit in Barcelona where Hebrew manuscripts sat beside ancient Farsi scrolls. The Iranian delegation listens, nods, sips tea. One of them tells a story about a Persian merchant in 16th century Safavid Iran who sold spice to a Jewish trader from Istanbul. It ends with them both being arrested for tax evasion. Everyone chuckles politely. You realize you're now fully role-playing as someone else. You are no longer minister of anything. You're the embodiment of ambiguous neutrality. You're the cultural man. It's kind of relaxing. Actually, blank. Underscore, blank. But underneath the tea and polite laughter, the air crackles. Because everybody knows, or almost knows. One of the younger Iranian men keeps sneaking glances at your badge. Another writes something down and immediately scratches it out. Farzaneh's hands shake just slightly when she refills your cup. You half expect someone to blurt out, "Wait, isn't that guy banned from entering this country by Supreme Leader's Decree number 42? But they don't, because what if they're wrong? Blank. Underscore, blank. Historians still debate whether this was a genuine mistake or a brilliant psychological tactic. Some say the Omani intermediary intentionally blurred the lines, knowing no one would dare escalate a diplomatic farce over tea and poetry. Others claim Iran did realize who you were, but quietly chose plausible deniability to avoid a scandal, or worse, a reason for war. A few argue you were never invited at all, that you simply showed up. But all agree on one thing. For a brief, strange morning in Tehran, two nations at ideological war shared a plate of baklava, a teapot, and the world's most uncomfortable silence. And it's only mid-morning. By the time the second teapot is empty, you've achieved something rare in global diplomacy. Everyone in the room is pretending not to know who you are. It's a delicate farce. One false word, and it shatters. But as long as the tea keeps pouring, and the conversation floats safely above politics, calligraphy, ancient trade routes, Rumi's favorite metaphors, the illusion holds. You've now been in Tehran, capital of the Islamic Republic of Iran, for 15 hours, and so far, nobody has screamed, or arrested you, or called a press conference demanding your immediate expulsion. Which, honestly, feels like a win. blank, underscore, blank. Of course, that's mostly because you know who you are. But they might not. Or they do, but it's easier for everyone if they don't say it out loud. And it all centers on you, the wrong man with the right smile. The accidental diplomat who stepped into a geopolitical funhouse mirror. The actual minister of culture. The Israeli cabinet official who should be back in Tel Aviv arguing over whether folk dance or experimental theater gets the bigger budget, is now half reclining on a brocade cushion in a city that, until yesterday, was marked on maps of where not to go unless you like being detained for eternity. You shift in your seat. The chair is absurdly comfortable. The pastries are aggressively delicious. And for a moment, you almost forget where you are. Blank, underscore, blank. That's when your name echoes in the hallway. Not your cover name, your real name. You freeze. Through the frosted glass doors, muffled voices rise, Farsi, sharp, escalating. Then, the unmistakable sound of a tray being dropped. Metal clatters. A hush falls. You glance at Farzaneh. Her face is still. The junior delegate, young, clean-shaven, probably trained in Paris, mutters something under his breath. It sounds suspiciously like, "Oh no." Then the doors open. Blank, underscore, blank. In walks someone very not mid-level. You don't recognize him, but your interpreter suddenly sits bolt upright, clutching his phone like it might turn into a flotation device. The new man is tall, in clerical robes, with a beard so symmetrical it might have its own Instagram account. His expression is unreadable, somewhere between serene and calculating. He doesn't speak, just walks in, makes a single lap around the room, eyes each person one by one, and then, finally, rests his gaze on you. You smile, a very tiny, very diplomatic smile. He tilts his head, says something in Farsi that makes the entire room go still. Your interpreter leans in. He asks who gave you permission to enter Iranian airspace. Oh, great, that question. Blank, underscore, blank. The truth is, no one gave you permission. Not officially. The Omani invitation included coordinates, not clearance. You boarded a private jet assuming someone had filed the right documents. And someone had, just not for you. Some poor UNESCO liaison, probably still in Paris, is missing a suitcase and wondering why their inbox contains 47 urgent messages in Farsi. But you can't say that. Instead, you say, "I believe all cultural visitors are welcome in this great country." There's a pause. Then the robed man says something again. Slowly, your interpreter blanches. He says, "Only the faithful are truly welcome." You exhale, softly. This is the edge of the cliff. This is where someone usually pushes. Blank, underscore, blank. But the cliff doesn't collapse. Instead, he just nods and leaves. No explanation, no accusations, just an unreadable expression and a swish of black robes. It's like being stared at by a chess master halfway through a game you didn't realize you were playing. The moment he's gone, Farzaneh exhales like she's been underwater. "Would you like more tea?" she asks faintly. You nod. "Please." Blank, underscore, blank. Back in Tel Aviv, your phone finally buzzes. A message from a very secure number. "Where are you?" You type back. "In a very nice room. With very tense tea." Another ping. "Do not say a single word to the press. Do not move. Do not order room service." Then a pause. "Do not accept any gifts larger than a grapefruit." You show your aide. He just sighs. "I think we're in a chapter of someone else's history book." He says. You nod. "Let's just not be a footnote in a war." Blank, underscore, blank. Historians still debate whether the man in clerical robes was a mid-level enforcer or a high-ranking shadow figure in the intelligence apparatus. Some claim he later appeared in photos with Quds Force officials. Others suggest he was simply there to see if you'd panic. The consensus? He was there to confirm that you were real. That the mistake was real. That this actually happened. Blank, underscore, blank. At dinner, things are oddly cheerful. The delegation cracks jokes about Persian soap operas. Someone makes a gentle pun in Farsi about mistaken identities and marriage comedies. You pretend to laugh, though the joke sails completely over your head. They serve fesenjan, rich with pomegranate and walnuts. You wonder if it's poisoned, then feel guilty for wondering. It's absolutely delicious. By the time the coffee comes, you've somehow made it through a full day in Iran without causing an international incident. You clink your tiny porcelain cup gently against Farzane's. She smiles. I hope, she says, we can continue this dialogue. You nod. I hope so too, though the dialogue may have to continue through less terrifying channels, like postcards, or Morse code, or interpretive dance. At precisely 7:04 the next morning, you open your eyes to the sound of nothing. No guards, no helicopters, no pounding on your door demanding your arrest. Just birdsong, the low hum of Tehran waking up, and the rustle of silk curtains in a room still far too luxurious for someone technically unauthorized to be here. You brush your teeth like a man preparing for trial. Every move measured, deliberate. There's a fresh shirt laid out for you, pressed, folded, and accompanied by a tiny note written in elegant Farsi script. You can't read it, but your aide does. He translates. Courtesy of our cultural friends. Please wear something less NATO. You smile, nervously, because today's schedule includes a tour of the Iranian National Library, followed by what's now being called an informal spiritual exchange. The wording is just vague enough to make your scalp tingle. Blank. Underscore, blank. The car that picks you up is different. No more lightly diplomatic minivan. This is a vintage Peugeot with tinted windows and an air of deliberate slowness. Your driver introduces himself as Naveed. His sunglasses are so dark he could be asleep. He does not speak the entire ride. You pass murals of martyrs and poetry banners strung across intersections. On a corner, a man sells books out of a suitcase. Hafez, Rumi, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, oddly in Spanish. Your aide whispers, this is either a cultural welcome, or a prelude to a hostage crisis. You nod. I've had worse brunches. Blank. Underscore, blank. The National Library is enormous, grand and minimalist. The walls are lined with manuscripts that smell like knowledge older than time, and maybe a little like coriander. A polite, balding curator with terrible coffee breath leads you through rows of preserved texts, illustrated Qurans, ancient treatises on astronomy, 19th century maps with Hebrew annotations from Iranian Jewish communities long vanished. This one, he says, pointing to a fragile scroll, mentions a Jewish spice merchant from Isfahan who once debated a Sufi on whether pickled lemons are holy. You lean in. The script is elegant, curling across the parchment like vines. This is incredible, you say, and mean it. Blank. Underscore, blank. At one point, someone coughs behind you. You turn. Another man in robes, not the same as yesterday's death stare in chief. This one looks like your neighbor's uncle, dignified. Gentle eyes, slightly hunched. He nods. This section, he says, is for banned scholars, people who study too freely. You smile. Then it's the right room for me. He chuckles. The moment feels warm, or maybe it's just the smell of aged paper and warm lighting. Either way, you feel oddly welcome. Blank. Underscore, blank. Which is the exact moment it all almost falls apart. At the bottom of a staircase, while walking toward a calligraphy exhibit, you hear it. Israeli? You freeze. Your aide freezes. Even Naveed the silent flinches. You look around. A pair of university students are whispering, one pointing subtly in your direction. Their eyes widen. They look at each other. One pulls out a phone. You can practically hear the tweet being composed. Bro, I swear to God that's an Israeli minister in the National Library right now. WTF. And just like that, the illusion is threatened. Blank. Underscore, blank. But then, a miracle. The robed scholar steps forward. He raises one hand gently, commanding but not aggressive, speaks to the students in rapid Farsi. Your interpreter catches enough to whisper. He said you're a visiting academic from Armenia. Special interest in shared Semitic roots. The students blink. Armenia? The scholar nods sagely. You shrug and mutter, Snorhakalutian, which might be Armenian for, thank you, or might be a toast. You heard it once at a conference dinner. The students look unsure but decide to walk away. The illusion survives. Barely. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You spend the next hour pretending to be a harmless linguist from Yerevan. You nod enthusiastically at 10th century poems. You ask 3 questions about calligraphy. At one point, you enthusiastically mispronounce the name of a Persian historian. And everyone visibly relaxes, because only a true scholar, or a deeply confused tourist, would be that off base. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Historians still debate whether this visit to the library was a cover for backchannel talks or just an elaborate way to keep you busy while people panicked behind the scenes. Some say secret negotiations happened in the manuscript room next door. Others say the visit was recorded and quietly circulated among clerics as evidence of accidental peace. One theory? This was all a test. To see what an Israeli official would do when immersed, unguarded, in the heart of Iran's cultural memory. Apparently, you passed. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Back in the car, Naveed finally speaks. One of the poets you saw, he says without turning, was exiled for speaking too much truth. You nod. I imagine that's common here. He shrugs. Everywhere. And that's the thing, isn't it? Everywhere you go, the truth is slippery, sometimes forbidden, sometimes invited in for tea, only to be escorted out the back door an hour later. You've spent 2 days walking through Iran's capital as both guest and ghost. Welcomed and erased, recognized and misfiled. And it's not over yet. Because next on the schedule, God help you, is a private visit to a religious seminary in Qom. And if Tehran is tense, Qom is sacred. A mistake there doesn't just trigger a scandal. It triggers fatwas. You're in a car heading to Qom, the theological nerve center of Iran, a city where turbans outnumber taxis, where theology has street signs, and where the wrong facial expression can be interpreted as heresy. The desert stretches around you in beige silence. Power lines march across the horizon like sentinels. Your aide is asleep, probably out of stress-induced exhaustion, while Naveed, ever the driver, ever the Sphinx, keeps his sunglasses on and his foot light on the gas. The air conditioning hums quietly, and you try not to think too hard about what you'll say when a room full of clerics asks about your position on eschatology. You Google safe neutral things to say about Shia theology, and immediately regret it. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You pass a rest stop shaped like a spaceship. No joke. There are Martian statues in front of the gas station and a giant fiberglass camel in a spacesuit. Naveed pulls over briefly to refill. You grab a bottle of water, and while waiting in line, spot a man reading Time magazine from 1998 with Ayatollah Khomeini on the cover. It feels like time here is elastic, stuck in loops, or maybe just refusing to move too fast. You exhale, quietly, because Qom is getting closer. And with it, the strange, hovering ghost of a man who started all of this, Ruhollah Khomeini. The Ayatollah who upended centuries. Blank. Underscore. Blank. By the time you reach the city, it's nearly dusk. Golden light slants across domes and minarets. The buildings are low, pale, quietly humming with religious gravity. It feels different here. Less like politics, more like inevitability. Here, no one needs to ask who you are. Because, here, they don't care who you are. They care what you represent. And that's a problem. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You're ushered into a side entrance of a seminary. No signs, no announcements, just the smell of stone, old books, and saffron incense. Inside, the air is cool and serious. You remove your shoes. You're handed a robe, not quite ceremonial, but definitely designed to make you look less like Israeli minister on accidental visit, and more like mysterious scholar from somewhere vaguely acceptable. You put it on and step into a room that could fit a basketball game but currently holds 6 clerics sitting in a semicircle, each looking like a museum exhibit on religious authority. One of them nods. "We have been expecting you," he says. You smile faintly, because of course they have. Blank. Underscore, blank. The discussion begins with pleasantries, then poetry, then philosophy. Everything, it seems, except the question of why you're actually here. One cleric recites a 14th century verse about peace being a robe shared by those who listen longer than they speak. You nod as though this is deeply profound. It is, actually, but it's also a very elegant way of saying, don't talk too much, stranger. You take the hint. Blank. Underscore, blank. Eventually, the oldest among them, white-bearded, robe layered like a sand dune, leans forward. His voice is soft, but clear. "We live in a world," he says, "where identity is both armor and target. Yours is both." You feel the tension in your stomach. Then he adds, "But history is full of mistaken visits. Jonah, the Magi, even the devil, they say, once knocked on the wrong door." You blink. Was that a threat? Or a joke? Hard to tell. Either way, you chuckle politely. Blank. Underscore, blank. Then comes the big question. You are a man of culture. The bearded one says, "Tell us, what is the role of the artist in a time of conflict?" You breathe in. Because finally, here is something you can answer. You talk about film, about how Israeli and Iranian filmmakers sometimes find themselves in the same festival lineup, and how their films speak to each other when their governments refuse to. You mention a young Iranian director whose work you once praised, anonymously, of course. He'd made a film about lost languages. You'd seen it at a secret screening in Berlin. It stuck with you. The clerics nod. One of them closes his eyes. Possibly in thought, possibly in judgment. Blank. Underscore, blank. Then, for a moment, something rare happens. One of them, young, maybe mid-30s, eyes sharp like a falcon, says something in rapid Farsi to the others. Your interpreter murmurs. He says he met that director in Kazvin. He admired that film too. There is a pause, and suddenly, there you are, an Israeli official and a cleric from Qom, agreeing on a film about the disappearance of old dialects. It's nothing, and also everything. Blank. Underscore, blank. Historians still debate whether this Qom meeting was spiritual theater or the faintest signal flare of change. Some say you were being tested, to see if you'd lose composure, offend a scholar, or ask a question too bold. Others believe it was a kindness, a way for Iran to give you plausible deniability, to wrap your accidental arrival in a veil of soft conversation and dusty books. One theory says the entire Qom delegation knew you were Israeli, but preferred to believe you were just a guest of culture, a ghost of peace, because ghosts, after all. Aaron, you leave Qom under cover of starlight. No motorcade, no official farewell, just Navid's quiet nod, your aide whispering, "We're still alive," and a teapot you were gifted that may or may not be bugged. The desert highway unspools before you like a ribbon of silence. The headlights bounce gently off rocks and roadside shrines. You roll down your window a little and let the wind slap some clarity into you. You should feel terrified. You don't. You feel confused, curious, like a character who wandered off the main plot of history and accidentally found the quiet part where nothing explodes. Which, for someone from your background, is borderline revolutionary. Blank. Underscore, blank. By morning, you're back in Tehran. Your room has been tidied. Someone restocked the minibar with exactly one pistachio. You stare at it for a long moment before deciding it's either a joke or a poetic threat. Possibly both. Your aide is now sporting an eye twitch. "We got another message from Tel Aviv," he says. "They're officially not acknowledging you're here." You blink. "Wait, They're denying I'm here? No, he says, rubbing his temple. They're denying the concept of you being here. A pause. They said, and I quote, no Israeli official has been, will be, or could possibly be in a location which does not recognize Israeli presence. You whistle. That's some Olympic-level denial. He nods. If it helps, the Iranians are saying the same thing, only more poetically. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Which brings us to the heart of this chapter. Denial. The backbone of diplomacy. You see, every serious diplomatic accident has a phase where everyone involved refuses to admit the accident occurred. Sometimes for legal reasons, sometimes for pride, often because it's easier to say, well, we never saw that person, than to deal with the chain reaction of what acknowledging them would mean. You're now in that phase. It's like being a Schrodinger's minister, simultaneously in Iran and not in Iran. Simultaneously a threat and a tea guest. Simultaneously something they all saw and something they'll all deny. Honestly, it's impressive. Blank. Underscore. Blank. This strange calm, the eye of the diplomatic storm, is where the bureaucracy kicks in. Because while everyone else is busy denying your existence, someone still has to handle your paperwork. That's when you meet the real power, Madame Shaheen, the head of diplomatic logistics. She's 60, stylish in that effortless Persian way, and carries 2 phones and one tiny blue notebook that seems to control the destiny of every person who crosses her path. She eyes you like a hawk evaluating a mildly disappointing falcon. Your name, she says. You give it. She writes something. That is not the name on the documents. I know. Another scribble. And your country? You hesitate. She doesn't look up. Let me guess. It is a country that is not currently listed among our recognized participants. You nod. She sighs. I will mark you down as undeclared independent scholar from Eastern Mediterranean zone. You blink. That's an entire euphemism. She shrugs. It's Q3 protocol for accidental guests. Blank. Underscore. Blank. This is the part most people never hear about. The elegant bureaucrats. The folders labeled contingency. Misidentified delegation. The way entire institutions quietly reshape reality so that nothing official ever happened. Your entire stay is now being retrofitted into a legal fiction. You didn't enter under your real name. You didn't meet who you met. You didn't say what you said. As of this moment, you're a ghost in the guest book. And as you sip yet another cup of mint tea, it occurs to you, this might be the safest place you've ever been. Because if no one acknowledges your presence, no one can hold you accountable for it. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Historians still debate whether this kind of non-presence diplomacy is cowardice or genius. Some say it undermines transparency and creates the kind of ambiguous spaces where bad actors thrive. Others argue it's the only way enemies ever sit in the same room, by pretending they aren't. There's even a paper titled, Guests Who Were Never There. Diplomatic Purgatories in Modern Middle East Relations, which you once skimmed while waiting for a delayed flight in Zurich. Now, you're the footnote in that paper. Possibly the sequel. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You're invited to one last event before your departure. An informal cultural luncheon with regional arts leaders. The invite is handwritten, sealed with wax, and delivered under your hotel door with no sender. You laugh. I feel like I'm being invited to join a secret society. You say. Your aide grins. If they start wearing masks and talking about Persian shadow puppetry, we're leaving. You nod. Agreed. But of course, you'll go. Because at this point, what else are you going to do? You've already been to Qom. And lived. You arrive at the luncheon expecting finger food and polite smiles. What you get is a Persian garden. A real one. Walled off from the noise of the city, lined with tiled fountains, flowering pomegranate trees, and walkways shaded by grapevines so thick you could hide a dozen secret negotiations under them. There's no press, no armed guards, no obvious surveillance, though you're sure it's there. Somewhere, Someone is watching you through binoculars shaped like antique opera glasses. A man in a sky blue suit greets you at the gate. He introduces himself only as Mehrdad. No title, no last name, just Mehrdad. He gestures to the table in the center of the courtyard, set with fruits, soft flatbread, and a centerpiece of blooming saffron crocuses. Please, he says, you are the honored ghost. You blink. I'm sorry, did you say ghost? He grins. Of course, you exist here, and yet you don't. That makes you one of the most powerful people in the room. You sit, cautiously, blank, underscore, blank. The other guests begin arriving in small, quiet waves. There's an Iranian calligrapher who spent 6 years in Italy restoring manuscripts with gold leaf. A woman who runs a traditional music school near the Caspian coast. A theater director whose entire troupe performs underground because their last play was banned for using the word window too symbolically. Everyone knows who you are. No one says it. Instead, they talk about culture. Do your people still dance in circles? One asks. You nod. Usually. Sometimes in straight lines. Depends on the politics. They laugh. Someone serves yogurt with honey and walnuts. Someone else starts reading a Rumi verse, but halfway through switches to a Leonard Cohen lyric without blinking. Blank. Underscore, blank. You find yourself relaxing. It's the weirdest thing, sitting here, in a garden in the capital of a country whose state-run television once used your face in a slideshow titled Enemies of the Revolution, and somehow feeling more at ease than you do at budget committee meetings back home. It's quiet, but not empty. The type of quiet you only get when everyone in the room knows this might be the last time they're allowed to be this open for a very, very long time. Blank. Underscore, blank. Then someone brings out the coffee. Dark, thick, served in little cups painted with birds. As it's being poured, Mehrdad leans over and whispers, "This coffee, very special. You should know. It's named for a man who was once almost executed for using the word hope too many times in his poetry." You blink. That's inspiring. He nods. Or terrifying, depending on the roast. You sip. It tastes like cinnamon, cardamom, and revolution, politely refusing to shout. Blank. Underscore, blank. And then, somehow, the conversation shifts. The director asks you, if the borders vanished tomorrow, what's the first thing you'd show us? You pause. Then, a synagogue in Haifa that smells like cinnamon and always has coffee ready. Even for strangers. The calligrapher raises a brow. Even for us? Especially for you. A beat. Then, laughter. Not polite. Real. Nervous. Almost giddy. Because that's the thing about saying the quiet part out loud in a place like this. It's not forbidden. It's just not done. Blank. Underscore, blank. One woman leans across the table. Her accent is rural. Her smile cautious. Do you think you will be punished for this when you go home? You shrug. If I tell the truth? Probably. Then lie, she says. But remember it. And that's when you realize, you're not the only ghost here. They're all ghosts. Artists erased from public funding lists. Musicians playing in rooms with curtains drawn. Directors who can't post their own scripts online. But they're here, eating fruit, laughing, whispering truths into the steam of coffee cups. And now, they've invited you to be one of them. Blank. Underscore, blank. Historians still debate whether this luncheon was the real summit. Not the library visit, not the calm seminary, but this quiet moment of mutual cultural treason, dressed up as a polite meal. One theory suggests Mehrdad was a retired intelligence officer, using art as his last game board. Another claims the garden was wired for sound, and the entire lunch was performed for an unseen audience of generals and diplomats waiting to decide if you were a threat or a possibility. A third theory? No one was listening. That it was just a lunch. And yet somehow, that made it the most dangerous moment of all. Blank. Underscore, blank. You leave the garden slowly. Everyone hugs like old friends. even if they've only known you for 90 minutes. Mehrdad slips you a book. No cover, just blank pages, filled with handwritten Farsi, English, and drawings of trees. On the last page, ghosts remember better than the living. Blank, underscore, blank. Back in the car, Naveed hands you a business card. You flip it over. It's blank. He smirks. It's for when you forget who you were this week. He says. You laugh, a little too loudly. Then you sit back and watch the garden disappear in the rearview mirror. With no tail markings, just a subtle scratch on the fuselage that, your aide insists, means it once belonged to the Spanish royal family. You don't ask questions. You've got 8 hours left in Tehran. And the strangest thing? You're not in a hurry to leave. Blank, underscore, blank. Back at the hotel, everything is just slightly off. The staff is warmer. One doorman gives you a wink. Your room now has a fruit basket, though all the apples are arranged to look vaguely like a missile. A new note on your pillow reads, "We hope your cultural impressions were lasting." Your aide stares at it. I don't know whether this is hospitality or an elegy. You shrug. Why not both? Blank, underscore, blank. You decide to walk. No escorts, no cars, just you and a silk scarf someone insisted you wear as a gesture of mutual ambiguity. The streets of Tehran, you find, are full of contradictions. A teenage girl wearing Converse and quoting Beyoncé passes an old man reading Rumi aloud on a corner. A fruit vendor sings opera. A young couple pretend not to hold hands while managing to be somehow completely intertwined. You pass a bookstore with no name. Its windows filled with censored books, each blacked out strategically. The titles erased but the authors' names defiantly left intact. It feels like the entire city is performing a slow, unspoken dance of we know, but say nothing, and you're now fluent in the choreography. Blank, underscore, blank. You sit at a cafe. An actual one, not secret, not coded, just a regular cafe where the waiter has a mustache that belongs in a silent film and the espresso is startlingly strong. You order something called spicy nostalgia. It turns out to be coffee with chili and rose water. It tastes like drinking a love letter you weren't supposed to read. You sip slowly. Your aide joins you with a newspaper. On page 6, hidden between local festival announcements and grain prices, there's a tiny article titled, "Regional Visitor Attends Unscheduled Cultural Event." No name, no country, no photo, just a note that dialogue was conducted with emphasis on poetry, mutual recognition, and respect. You raise your cup in a silent toast to the ghost you've become. Blank, underscore, blank. But of course, reality eventually knocks. At 10:45 p.m., Naveed appears. No words, just a nod, a subtle glance at the street, and a small gesture toward the waiting car. You follow. The drive to the airport is different this time. No jokes, no music, just the low hum of the engine and the rising sense that once you're airborne, none of this will be real anymore. You pass a mural of a clenched fist, then one of a dove, then one of the fist and the dove shaking hands over a stack of books. You point. I think that one's new. Naveed shrugs. They paint faster than history moves. Blank, underscore, blank. At the airport's private gate, you're met by a man in a tailored suit and a haircut so precise it probably has diplomatic immunity. He checks your passport, looks at your face, then back at the passport. He hesitates, and says, "Ah yes, the professor." You nod, yes, still deeply committed to ancient manuscripts. He says, deadpan, "Aren't we all?" Then stamps something that may or may not be real and waves you through. No ceremony, no last-minute arrest, no dramatic piano cue, just a door that opens quietly, and then you're inside the plane. Blank, underscore, blank. Historians still debate whether the final 24 hours of your stay were orchestrated by Iranian intelligence or merely the result of everyone being too confused to make a decision. Some claim Naveed was never a driver at all, but a handler assigned to observe how you responded to the controlled chaos. Others believe the ghost protocol was invented in real time by middle managers trying not to lose their pensions. One declassified memo simply reads, "Do not acknowledge. Do not escalate. Offer poetry. A masterpiece of passive diplomacy. Blank. Underscore. Blank." The plane lifts off at 12:03 a.m. You look out the window at the lights of Tehran disappearing beneath a thin veil of cloud and smog. Your aide breaks the silence. "You know what this means, right?" You nod. "We'll never be able to write this down," he adds, "and no one will believe it if we try." You smile. Perfect bedtime story material. Then, blank, underscore, blank. You recline your seat. The cabin lights dim. The hum of the engine settles into a gentle, lullaby-like rhythm. And for the first time in days, you close your eyes, not in fear, but in something closer to peace. Because in a world built on conflict, you just spent 4 days being impossible, unlikely, unrecognized, and somehow, miraculously, welcomed. You land nowhere, officially, anyway. The plane touches down at an airstrip on an island that no one really discusses. It's the kind of place where the only people who wear suits are the ones trying not to be remembered. The tarmac is hot, the air thick with sea salt and ozone. Your passport is returned to you in a sealed envelope marked, "corrected." Your aide opens it, skims it, and raises an eyebrow. "You're now a visiting folklorist from Cyprus," he says, with a minor in ethnomusicology. You nod solemnly. "Always wanted to be one. Congratulations. You now specialize in ancient percussion from disputed zones." You glance at the sea, shimmeringly bright and silent beyond the razor wire fence. You can't help but think, is this where stories go when they've run out of countries to live in? Blank, underscore, blank. You're escorted, gently but firmly, to a gray building that smells like lemon disinfectant and last-minute legal arrangements. A man in a shirt with no insignia offers you weak coffee and a clipboard. "We're here to help you. Resume." Resume? Whatever your government wants you to have been doing this past week. He taps the clipboard. The options are: security consultation in Oman, cultural roundtable in Geneva, or a silent meditation retreat in Nepal. Choose wisely. You glance at your aide. Geneva sounds plausible. Geneva is currently hosting an actual conference on antique carpet preservation. The man replies without emotion. "So yes, we can slip you into the back row of that if necessary." You circle, Geneva, because of course you do. Blank, underscore, blank. The debriefing is quick but theatrical. You're asked if you were approached by foreign agents. You were. Whether you received any documents. You were handed a teapot. And if you discussed nuclear policy, you barely discussed breakfast. There's a particularly awkward moment when the debriefer holds up a hand-drawn sketch of a pomegranate tree and asks, "Did this come up at any point?" You pause, only metaphorically. He scribbles something that might be a doodle or a death warrant. Then closes the file. Your story is now complete. He says, "And like that, you're real again. Sort of. Blank, underscore, blank." But reintegration is tricky. You return to Tel Aviv under a different name, then switch back to your real one after 2 days of officially being somewhere in Europe. Your inbox contains 423 emails, including 7 from your mother asking why your phone keeps going straight to voicemail and 1 from your intern titled, "Did you quit?" At the ministry, people are polite but vaguely unsettled. Your assistant won't look you in the eye for 3 days. The culture director asks if you've learned anything philosophical. You say something about libraries and silence, and she nods solemnly like you've returned from a pilgrimage. And in a way, you have. Blank, underscore, blank. You start dreaming in Farsi. Not full sentences, just fragments, snippets, echoes of Rumi verses, the sound of a fountain, the weight of unspoken questions. You remember the calligrapher, the cleric's quiet smile, The cup of coffee named for a banned poet. You wonder if they're safe. You wonder if they're real. Then you wonder if you are. Because what happens when something impossible happens, and you have no one to tell? Blank. Underscore, blank. Historians still debate whether you ever truly came back. There are photos of you at ministry meetings. Yes, press releases. A poorly cropped image of you shaking hands with the ambassador from Slovenia. But something about your posture is different now. You smile more softly. You ask more questions than you answer. One aide swears you no longer take sugar in your tea. Another claims you keep humming a melody that isn't quite Israeli and isn't quite Persian but somehow makes her tear up in traffic. There are rumors you own a scarf with a hidden embroidery of a garden. None of these are confirmed. Because some stories don't live on paper. They live in pause, in gesture, in the soft silence between two people who've decided not to name the country they come from. Blank. Underscore, blank. You finally respond to your mother's messages. She calls you immediately. Where were you? She demands. You smile, studying old books, drinking strange coffee, listening. A pause. Then. Did you at least learn something useful? You nod. Yes, I learned how to be invisible. She sighs. So, nothing I can put in the family newsletter. You laugh. Not unless there's a haunted diplomacy section. And for once, you let the mystery be. Your first official reappearance is at a regional summit in Athens. There are name tags, floral centerpieces, a buffet table so aggressively Greek it smells like feta and myth. You wear your best suit, the one that says I never disappeared for diplomatic reasons, and shake hands like a man who hasn't been accidentally adopted by Iranian cultural elites. Everyone's polite. No one asks questions, except for the Bulgarian foreign minister, who gives you a weirdly long handshake and says, "You know, I heard a very interesting story about Tehran last week." You blink. I bet it had excellent lighting. He grins. It involved a garden and a calligrapher. You keep smiling. Then it wasn't me. I don't even like plants. He nods slowly. Of course not. And just like that, it's gone. Erased. Filed in the mental drawer labeled things we all know but will never mention over wine. Blank. Underscore, blank. Over lunch, you sit next to a woman from the Cypriot delegation. She passes you a folded napkin. Inside, a poem, in Farsi, about a ghost who wanders through gardens, collecting names no one can pronounce. No signature. You glance at her. She winks. You consider your options and decide. If you are now a myth, you might as well be a generous one. You add a line beneath the poem. The ghost keeps walking, but only in places where the coffee is warm. You pass it back. She grins and says nothing for the rest of the meal. Blank. Underscore, blank. Back in Tel Aviv, life becomes bizarrely normal. You sign paperwork. You attend briefings where people say things like strategic pivot and bilateral elasticity. And no one mentions the fact that your entire presence for the past week has been retroactively erased. Your name is restored to the roster. Your Wikipedia page goes back up, scrubbed of anything ambiguous. The only edit is a footnote that says you once visited Geneva for arts-related informal diplomacy. Even that line vanishes a few weeks later. But people still look at you differently. Like you walked into a mirror and came out speaking in riddles. And maybe you did. Blank. Underscore, blank. One day, your office gets a letter. No return address. Just beautiful handwriting in violet ink. Inside, a postcard. The photo is of a window, slightly ajar, sunlight streaming in. On the back, you spoke well. We remember. That's all. No name, no country, no threat, just acknowledgement. You tuck it into your top drawer, right next to your passport and the invitation to the Cypriot Ethnomusicology Symposium you now apparently support annually. You think about the garden, the coffee, the silence. Blank. Underscore, blank. Historians still debate the ripple effects of your uninvited visit. A leaked cable years later refers cryptically to Unexpected softening during cultural talks. Origin classified. An Iranian director receives funding to finish a film that had previously been stalled for tone issues. That film, years later, gets a 12-minute standing ovation at Cannes. In Calm, a new poetry collection is published anonymously. Some of the verses mirror conversations you remember word for word. Others are impossible dreams written in the voice of ghosts. Your favorite line? The guest who never arrived stayed longer than the rest. You copy it into a notebook. Sometimes, when you're stressed, you read it out loud like a spell. It helps. Blank. Underscore, blank. At a security conference months later, a diplomat from a country you can't publicly acknowledge corners you during a coffee break. I heard you met someone in Calm, she says, casually pouring sugar into her espresso. You keep your tone even. I meet lots of people, especially in ancient cities. She nods. Did he ask about the end of the world? You stir your coffee. No, just about stories. A pause. Good, she says. That's how you know they trust you. Then she walks away, leaving behind a napkin covered in precise little doodles, pomegranate trees, a teacup, and a dove flying through a maze of windows. You fold it, add it to the drawer. Blank. Underscore, blank. That night, you walk along the Tel Aviv beach. You buy coffee from a man with a portable cart who doesn't ask questions and plays Leonard Cohen through a cracked Bluetooth speaker. As you sip, a kid chases pigeons across the promenade. Someone nearby is reading aloud from a Hebrew translation of Rumi. And somewhere, across the water, in a country you may never visit again, someone may be doing the same. You close your eyes. The breeze is cool. The ghosts are quiet tonight. Weeks pass. Then months. Your calendar fills back up with the usual committees, joint declarations, tense video calls with diplomats who speak in perfect English and perfect evasion. Nothing explodes. No sudden invitations to calm. No more anonymous poems. And yet, the air around you never quite returns to normal. You notice small things, like how people pause before they speak to you now, like they're recalibrating, trying to remember which version of you they're talking to. One morning, the finance minister says, "You've been quiet lately. I almost miss when you had all those controversial opinions." You smile. They're still here. They just drink better coffee now. He laughs, but you notice he doesn't ask for details. No one really does. Blank. Underscore, blank. But the world keeps nudging. You get a letter, physical again. Because apparently that's how this game is played now. No return address, but the handwriting is familiar, slanted, careful, threaded with ink as precise as architecture. It's a program for an art exhibit in Istanbul, titled, "The Guest Who Arrived by Mistake." You pause. No explanation, no sender, just the date, the title, and a penciled-in annotation beside one of the paintings. No cameras allowed. But memories encouraged. You tell no one, but you book a flight. Blank. Underscore, blank. The gallery is small, hidden between a carpet store and a crumbling bookstore that smells like molasses and forgotten dreams. Inside, sketches, poems, embroidered handkerchiefs with verses sewn in both Farsi and Hebrew. No placards, no official statements, just a silent agreement between you and the room. Yes, you know. One exhibit shows 6 identical teacups, each chipped differently. Another shows a shadow behind a curtain, rendered in charcoal and saffron pigment. You walk slowly. No one stops you. And then you see it. A single panel, a watercolor of a garden, your garden. The pomegranate trees, the grapevines, even the coffee cups. It's all there, painted from memory. Below it, a single line. Some ghosts remember to visit in spring. Blank. Underscore, blank. Later that night, in your hotel room, you sit by the window with the city humming quietly below. You try to write it all down. You can't. Not the trip. Not the garden. Not calm. Not even the silence afterward. Every time you try, the sentences slip away. like steam off a teacup or a name you only heard once but never forgot. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Historians still debate whether this Istanbul exhibit was a quiet diplomatic signal or just the art world's way of smuggling meaning through security. Some say it was approved at the highest level, an unofficial acknowledgement of what had happened without having to speak it aloud. Others say the artist was rogue, maybe exiled, maybe not, maybe both. Your aide later finds a blurry blog post about the show. The caption under one of the photos reads, "For the one who listened instead of declaring. For the one who drank the coffee. You both pretend not to see it. Blank. Underscore. Blank." A month later, your phone buzzes. It's a text. Unknown number. "Are you still collecting windows?" You don't respond. Not because you don't want to, but because you're afraid that, if you do, it might vanish. The whole thing. All of it. The garden. The ghosthood. The soft space where enemies sat and didn't hate each other for a few hours. Instead, you open your drawer, take out the teapot, the blank business card, the embroidered poem. You line them up, like relics, and for a moment, you're back in that courtyard, listening to the sound of doves brushing the sky. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Life resumes. But you're different. You speak less in meetings. You listen more. And every so often, when discussions grow tense and everyone starts saying the word, security, you interrupt gently and ask, "Would anyone like some tea?" Sometimes people laugh. Sometimes they just blink. But the mood always softens. Because even now, far from that impossible garden, you carry something with you. Something you can't name but can pour into a cup. You return to Geneva, not in secret this time. It's a scheduled panel. You're invited to speak on cultural diplomacy and crisis management. There's a printed badge with your real name, a lanyard, an agenda filled with bullet points like cross-border collaboration mechanisms and cultural memory as soft power. You think about the garden, and you know, none of this will touch that. Still, you step onto the stage, nod to the moderator, and begin. Your first line? "I'm not sure if I was supposed to be where I was last year. But I listened, and I drank the coffee, and I came back with questions." The room stiffens, just slightly, then relaxes, because you're not accusing, you're just remembering out loud. And the room listens. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Afterwards, a diplomat from Tunisia approaches you in the hallway. You mentioned gardens. You nod. He lowers his voice. "There's a woman in my country who paints doves in pomegranate trees. She says it's not political." You smile. "It always is." He hands you a folded piece of paper. Inside, a sketch, a dove, a window, a teacup with 3 steam lines. You fold it carefully, place it in your notebook, and say, "Tell her I said thank you." He nods, like he's handing off a fragment of an old secret that's safer now. Just barely. Blank. Underscore. Blank. That night, you take a walk around Lake Geneva. There's mist on the water. Tourists laughing. A violinist playing something too slow for the hour. You find a bench and sit. Pulling out the sketch, you study the curves of the bird, the odd shading around the window, the way the teacup sits slightly off-center, like it's about to tip, and you wonder if all these messages, these fragments from strangers, these tiny flare-ups of recognition, are meant for you at all. Or if you're just one of many ghosts now, passing the torch forward in cups of unsweetened coffee and half-finished verses. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Historians still debate the role of ghosts in diplomacy. Not literal ones, of course, but the people who drift just outside the official story. Those who occupy rooms they weren't meant to enter. Who say things off script. Who smile just enough to make the silence useful. There's even a working term in a declassified European security memo. Ghost protocol actors. The memo suggests these people are essential for breakthroughs no one can ever admit happened. You're quoted anonymously. Something about one minister's strange affinity for coffee diplomacy. You laugh when you read it. Because it's true. Blank. Underscore. Blank. A year passes. Quietly. Until one morning, an invitation arrives. Hand-delivered. No name. Just the seal of an unfamiliar ministry and the phrase, "An evening of cultural reflections." Location. Muscat. You show it to your aide. He sighs. Is this another ghost operation? You shrug. I won't know unless I go. He nods slowly. Should I bring the emergency scarf? You grin. Better bring two. Blank. Underscore. Blank. In Muscat. You arrive early. The venue is a converted courtyard. Stone walls. Strings of lights overhead. Soft oud music drifting like smoke. You're shown to your seat by a man who says nothing but nods with a smile that feels older than empires. One by one, the guests arrive. Some you know, others you've only heard whispers about. A woman who used to translate banned books in Kabul. A professor who lost his job for asking why ancient Persian poems still matter. A former intelligence officer who now teaches children how to paint birds. No formal agenda, just a table, a pot of coffee, and 6 cups. You take your seat and realize the ghost story isn't over. It's just changing authors. The coffee is darker this time. Omani roast, spiced with clove and crushed date seeds, poured in a brass dalla that gleams like a secret. You sip it slowly, letting it burn just enough to keep you grounded. No one speaks at first. You're all just present. Old faces, new ones, and a silence so profound it feels curated. Then, softly, someone clears their throat. The professor from Kabul speaks first. Do you know what we call this? In Farsi, when people gather without being told why. You raise an eyebrow. He smiles. We call it a memory rehearsal. Like actors, before the story becomes history. You nod. You understand. You're not here to decide anything. You're here to remember something no one will ever record. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The woman beside you pulls out a small clay object. It's a whistle. Worn, chipped, but shaped like a dove. She places it on the table gently. My grandmother used this to call children in for meals, or to warn them if soldiers were coming. No one breathes. You lean forward and whisper, "Can I try it?" She smiles and shakes her head. It only works if you were born within 3 miles of the village. A light laugh bubbles around the table, grateful, sad, tired. Someone refills the coffee. Blank. Underscore. Blank. A man across from you, he never gave his name, opens a folder. Inside, drawings, maps with no borders, homes with no doors, a library built in the shape of a spiral, with no entrance except memory. I was told, he says, to keep these safe until someone remembered what we were trying to protect. You reach for one. A sketch of 2 hands exchanging a teacup over a barbed wire fence. You trace the line of steam rising from the cup. It's shaped like a question mark. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You all sit there for hours. There's no declaration. No minutes taken. But what happens in that courtyard is real diplomacy. The kind that smells like cardamom. That can't be televised. That doesn't end with handshakes but with eyes meeting and staying there a moment too long. It's the kind of diplomacy where everyone has lost something, and no one pretends otherwise. And you realize this is what ghosts are for. Not haunting, not warning, just remembering. Together. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Historians still debate the origins of what they call the Muscat Accord. But here's the thing. There was no accord. Nothing was signed. Nothing was drafted. Nothing was even agreed upon. But a few months later, a band play is quietly performed in a student theater in Tehran. An Israeli violinist tours Jordan under a French passport. A Persian-language poetry translation appears on a Hebrew-language blog. None of these events are linked, except by you, and 5 others, and a table in the courtyard that no longer exists. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You return home with sand in your shoes and a new poem tucked into your shirt pocket. It's written in 3 languages and ends with, If a story has no border, it cannot be held hostage. You frame it, hang it above your desk. And whenever negotiations get tense, whenever people start shouting about sovereignty and violation and threat matrices, you glance at it and smile. Then you say, let's take a break and make coffee. Blank. Underscore. Blank. That's your secret now. You don't fight wars. You brew warmth. You serve possibility in porcelain. And slowly, one forgotten guest, one blank page, one wrong invitation at a time, you shift the story. Because even ghosts can set the table. One day, you get a call from someone you haven't spoken to in years. A former classmate, now a journalist. I'm doing a piece, she says. Unofficial diplomacy, off-the-record efforts, that kind of thing. You say nothing. She adds, I heard your name come up. In a very roundabout way. You lean back in your chair. She chuckles. Relax, I'm not asking for confirmation. I just want a quote. What kind? The kind that makes the reader feel like the world's not falling apart. You consider your answer. Then, sometimes the people who aren't invited bring the best wine. She laughs. That's perfect. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The piece runs a week later. Your name isn't mentioned, but people in the know reach out, indirectly. A Dutch ambassador sends you a crate of saffron. The Romanian cultural attaché sends you a recording of a song, unsigned, titled, Window Between, and a small envelope arrives from a return address in Cyprus. Inside, a scrap of red fabric stitched with a tiny dove. Mid-flight, no words, just the stitch. You place it in your drawer, next to the ghost things. Blank. Underscore. Blank. At home, your garden becomes your refuge. You weren't a gardener before all this. Now you know too much about soil. You plant pomegranate trees, not because they'll fruit anytime soon, but because the shape of their leaves reminds you of hands held out in offering. You brew your coffee slower now, and you've stopped sweetening it. Blank. Underscore. Blank. One evening, during a particularly dull round of policy drafting, you find yourself doodling on the edge of a legal pad. You draw 6 chairs, a window, a steaming cup, a bird perched on the edge of something uncertain. Your aide leans over. That another secret summit you're planning? You grin. Might be. He tilts his head. Does it have snacks? Only existential ones. He laughs, then pauses. You've changed. You nod. I hope so. He considers that. You're less afraid of not being understood. You don't answer, but you know he's right. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Historians still debate the long-term impact of coffee diplomacy. The term catches on. Unofficially, you start hearing it on podcasts, whispered in policy panels, scribbled on napkins in neutral cities. A graduate student in Prague writes a thesis titled, Serving the Self in Silence, The Rise of Unverifiable Dialogue. She emails you, asking if she can interview you. You don't reply, but you send her a poem. If a dove enters the wrong room, and no one stops it, did it still belong there all along? She responds with a thank you note in 3 languages and a sketch of a teacup. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The Israeli press eventually runs a human interest piece. Not on you, of course, but on a rumored delegation that may or may not have existed. The comments section fills with jokes, conspiracies, and one person who writes, if it ends in less war and more weird coffee, I'm in. You save that one. Sometimes that's enough. Blank. Underscore. Blank. And just when you think it's all behind you, you get an email. Subject line. The window is open again. No text. Just an attachment. A recording. It's the sound of birds. Wind. A kettle starting to whistle. End. Barely audible. A voice. Soft. Accented. Unmistakably kind. Saying, we've set the table. You close your eyes. And reply. Coming soon. Bring extra cups. The new gathering isn't in Qom, or Tehran, or even Muscat. It's in a neutral city with too many pigeons. a confusing tram system, and a fountain that's always broken. The invitation arrives as a folded menu. Inside, a list of fictional dishes with strange names like Diplomatic Regret au Sel and Twice Cooked Trust. Your seat is reserved under a pseudonym, one you haven't used in years, the listener. You pack lightly, a scarf, a notebook, 2 blank business cards, and the whistle-shaped stone the woman from Kabul slipped you in Muscat. Just in case someone calls the ghosts back. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The venue is a library after hours. Not a grand national library, just a small, cozy one with crooked shelves and bad lighting. The kind that smells like glue and ideas. There are no name tags. No flags. Just a long table and 12 chairs. Some of the faces you know. The artist from the Istanbul exhibit. The director whose play was once banned for its symbolism. Naveed. Though he's now wearing glasses and has somehow become more mysterious. Others are strangers, but only technically, because you recognize something behind their eyes, the twitch of memory. The practiced silence, the half-smile of people who've whispered impossible things in safer languages. Blank. Underscore. Blank. There's no agenda. The host, an elderly librarian with exactly 3 teeth and a cane that seems to click in Morse code, tells you. Tonight, we're cataloging the moments no one else kept. Then she leaves, and you all begin. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Someone unrolls a map, not of land, but of timelines. Moments that never made the news. A border guard who let a violinist through without a visa because she played Hatikva under her breath. A teacher who crossed into enemy territory just to return a student's book. A coffee vendor who paused his cart war zone side because 2 soldiers were trading poems. Each memory added is drawn on a blank card, labeled with the phrase, "We were there." Briefly, no one interrupts, no one asks for proof. That's the point. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You read aloud, for the first time, the poem that was slipped into your shirt in Muscat. When you finish, the calligrapher from Tehran, who you hadn't noticed was even in the room, nods once. And says, "We're building a future they'll never be able to quote." Blank. Underscore. Blank. Historians won't write about this night. Because they can't. Because you won't let them. Because the story was never meant to be canonized. It was meant to be lived. In gestures. In warnings disguised as laughter. In mismatched teacups and paintings with windows and doves and coffee steam curling like questions no briefing can answer. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Before you leave, the host hands you a final card. A watercolor of an empty table. Underneath, the words, "The next guest arrives by mistake." You nod, and know exactly who to send it to. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Back in Tel Aviv, you unpack quietly. You don't hang the new watercolor. You place it in a drawer with the others. You make coffee. No sugar. No milk. You pour a second cup. Just in case. Because now, you understand. The work doesn't end. It just refills. Silently. Patiently. Hopefully. Like a pot of coffee left on the stove for the next ghost who wanders in.